I use paper. It's been a full year since I wrote my sermon on a piece of paper, and I haven't been in the office in about 2 weeks. And we have these really great pens in our office. And I really wanted to use my pen. I missed it in the 2 weeks that I've been out of the office, and that's one of my, I know, I'm weird, but Kayla and I love these pens. We special order these pens because they are the best pens. Please don't go steal them because we don't have very many left. So, yeah, you're not the only one. There's something about pens. This morning we're jumping into Mark. So we have worked our way through the Old Testament. Kind of quickly, really, because the Old Testament is a lot bigger than the amount of weeks we spent reading it in our narrative lectionary. But we've worked our way through all of the promises of the Old Testament, through the prophecies of Jesus coming, and Jesus is now here. We've experienced that birth on Christmas Eve. And last week is when the narrative lectionary actually started in Mark. So we missed just a little bit when I was gone, but don't worry, I'm going to catch you up. It's amazing. I was looking at, we're 21 verses into Mark is where we're starting today. So in the first 20 verses, I'm like, oh, not much happened. Not true at all. Those 20 verses are jam-packed, which is Mark's style. Mark is a super short gospel, but Mark is very unlike me. Mark is direct and to the point. There's no pretty wordage. It's not really... nothing in excess. Mark uses no excess words. So in 20 verses, Mark can say 75 times the things I can say in 400 verses because he is that direct. So a little bit about Mark. I want you to know the gospel that we're going into. So this is Introduction to Mark 101. And you're getting it for free. I paid thousands of dollars for it. So huge discount for you all. Most people believe that Mark is written by a man named John Mark. He was a companion of Paul and an interpreter for Peter, which interpreter in this case meant that he wrote down things for Peter. So Peter would speak them and he would put them to paper, essentially. Not paper, but scroll. However, Mark, in the Gospel of Mark, John Mark is never actually identified. The author of Mark is never actually identified. So scholars are really unsure of who authored Mark. It was probably written between 66 and 70. It is the earliest gospel, so it is the gospel that was written closest to Jesus' actual time on earth, yet it was written several decades after. And it was written during a time of Jewish revolt against Rome. It was written to Gentile Christians. So it was not written to the traditional Jewish community. It was written to people who had converted to Christianity following the life, ministry, and death and resurrection of Christ. It was primarily an oral tradition. This was a spoken story at one point in time, and then written down. It uses very few other sources. It's pretty much just an oral tradition. There are a couple of places in Mark where we can tie it to some other ancient text, but for the most part, it's original work of whoever authored this. I was looking for the best, I was trying to write the best overview of Mark, and I couldn't do it. So I pulled out the New Testament A Student's Introduction. This is from my freshman year of undergrad, and it's much better than the one I used in seminary, in my opinion. Don't tell my seminary professor that because they wrote it. But I want to read to you a little synopsis of Mark. Between about 64 CE, when Nero began Rome's first official persecution of Christians, and 70 CE, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, along with its temple and the original apostolic church, the Christian community faced a series of crises that threatened its survival. Responding to the wars, revolts, and persecutions that afflicted his group, Mark composed what appears to be the earliest narrative account of Jesus' public career, presenting Jesus' story in a way that was strikingly relevant to the precarious circumstances of Mark's intended readers. Mark's gospel thus portrays a Jesus who faces attack on three crucial fronts: from Jewish religious leaders, from local Herodian rulers, and Roman officials, painting Jesus as a hidden Messiah who was misunderstood and devalued by his contemporaries. Mark emphasizes that Jesus came to serve, to suffer, and to die, but also ultimately to triumph by submitting fully to the divine will. To serve, to suffer, to die, and to triumph through the divine will. That is the Jesus of Mark. And that is the Jesus we are going to be exploring through the Easter season. We are going to walk our way through Mark. So, a couple of things. If you've never read the Gospel of Mark in its entirety, do it. It's only 16 chapters. It's actually a pretty quick read. If you aren't a reader, it's okay. I'm going to share on our Facebook a YouTube video. I'll send it in an email too for those of you who don't have Facebook. And this is a 2-hour YouTube video, so it's super long YouTube video in the grand scheme of things. However, it is an actor who is reading the Gospel of Mark from beginning to end, and he does a phenomenal job. And so you can actually listen to it and just soak it in. He does a great job. It really is right at that 2-hour mark, and I will share that. I invite you to listen to that and to get the feel of the whole of Mark before we continue going step by step through it. So I'll share that hopefully today, if not tomorrow for sure, so that you can listen to that or watch it on your big YouTube TV as well. It'll be great. So what we missed in the first 20 verses: John the Baptist baptizing people in the Jordan, Jesus being baptized, God saying at that baptism, "You are my son in whom I am well pleased." We miss Jesus' temptation. However, it isn't a long explanation of the temptation. The temptation is like 2 verses in Mark. Jesus went into the wilderness, he was tempted. That's pretty much it. Like I said, Mark, straight to the point. We missed the arrest of John, which happened in half a verse, and the beginning of Jesus' ministry in Galilee, where Jesus said, "The kingdom is near, repent and believe." That is the beginning of Jesus' ministry. The kingdom of God is near, repent and believe. He announced it in Galilee. And we also missed the calling of the first 4 disciples: Simon and Andrew, James and John. So when we pick it up here in verse 21, oh, my marker fell out of my Bible. I have to find Mark all on my own. Okay. When we pick it up here in verse 21, it's Jesus. He has 4 disciples. He is really now starting to be more and more involved in public ministry. So if you want to follow along, it's on the screen today. You're welcome to open your Pew Bible. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him?" At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. As soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons. and the whole city was gathered around the door, and he cured many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also. For this is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. A leper came to him, begging him, and kneeling he said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, "I do choose. Be made clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them." But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into a town openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks. So much happens in these 24, that's the correct math, 24 verses. And it's really a struggle for me, because one thing I know is that sermons are about one thing, texts are about many things. And I want to talk about like 27 different things in this text. But we are going to focus on one particular area. We're going to focus on verse 38. Jesus answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." This isn't my favorite translation of verse 38. Verse 38, my favorite translation says, "People are searching for you," and Jesus says, "Well, let's go the other direction." "Oh, people are coming? No way, I don't want to be around people. Let's go the other way." Little introverted Jesus. I like that. But this here, I've come to really think of this verse in 38. "Let us go into the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." I really struggled with that. Here are all of these people who are searching for Jesus, who want desperately to be with Jesus, who are pressing themselves upon Jesus, trying to find Jesus, trying to be close to Jesus, trying to spend time with Jesus. And Jesus says, "No, let's go somewhere else." Jesus doesn't go back and explain to these people why he's leaving. Jesus doesn't go back and comfort them before he goes. Jesus doesn't go back and make sure they're okay before he goes. Jesus simply leaves and says, "We're leaving them to go somewhere else." And that's not very Midwestern, right? We are known for the world's longest goodbye, right? We say goodbye and then we're like, "Oh, one more thing." And then we say goodbye again and we're like, "Oh yeah, one more thing." And then we say goodbye 27 more times before we actually leave. And if somebody is talking to me, I'm Iowa nice, as we call it, and I just stand there and I let them talk. It doesn't matter how long they're talking to me. It doesn't matter if I really need to go. I might kind of inch away a little bit. But I'm not going to just be like, "See ya, I'm going this way." And Jesus is. And I really struggled with this. These people need you, Jesus. They are desperate for you. They are crying out for you, and you're just going to walk away? You're just going to leave them? And as I struggled with this, a Jewish rabbi said something that I found so insightful about this text. So this is a Jewish rabbi who does a podcast on narrative lectionary, and she said, "For me, I really think of Jesus as deciding between what's urgent and what's important." She said, these people pressing upon Jesus, it is an urgent matter. But Jesus knows a greater calling, and Jesus is focusing on what is important. And what is important is for Jesus to spread the good news to as many people as possible. That's what Jesus was called to do. And so even though Jesus has this urgent task before him, these people who are pressing themselves upon him, Jesus has to focus on what Jesus was called to, sharing the good news with the world. Jesus has to focus on the important task that has been laid in front of him by God. But then I struggle with that too. Aren't these people important too? I mean, I think they are. Shouldn't God think they're important too? Shouldn't Jesus think they're important too? They're not just urgent, they're important. But then I go the other way. So are all of the other people who would never hear this message if Jesus stayed with the urgent people, with the people Jesus has already talked to. So I'm kind of like back and forth. We got urgent and important. And then what do you do about the cases of when it's urgent and important? Can it be both? So I've been having this huge debate in my head for 2 weeks. It's like a hamster wheel going on in there over urgent and important and urgent together, and what is really urgent in our lives and what is really important in our lives. And how do we decipher the two? And how do we convince ourselves to stop prioritizing the urgent, to stop giving into the pressure of the urgent, and to focus on the important? So I'm going to give you an example, a very minor example that I have come up with. It's very minor in the grand scheme of this. This is not Jesus healing people kind of example. This is petty Alex life example. My house is a mess. Oh, always. My house is always a mess. And I'm not used to that. Yes, it's been 6 months that we've had children, but for 10 years, it was Brian and I. And for the first year of that, Brian was home and the house was spotless, and it was wonderful. And then it was just the two of us, and we kept our house pretty clean, pretty organized. We didn't have a lot of clutter. We didn't have toys everywhere. I was not stepping on Daniel Tiger and wanting to scream. My house was clean. And we vacuumed, and we did our sheets, and our kitchen counters were clean, and all of these things. My house is not that way anymore, and it really, really bothers me. But then my daughter says, "Mommy, will you play with me?" Okay, so what is urgent and what is important? The urgent is my clean house and the pressure to have a clean house. I love my father, but he comes and says, "You really need to dust up here." "I can't even see up there, Dad." Okay, that is the urgent in my life. The important is the relationship with my kid. So how can I learn to stop focusing on the urgent and to stop giving in to the pressure of the urgent, to have a clean fan above my stove? That's what my father was talking about, by the way. And instead, focus on the importance of the relationship with my father. And I think of this in other instances too. I've given up being on time. I was a 5-minute early person for the majority of my life. Then I became a pastor, and I was like, okay, still got to try and at least be on time. And now I'm like, because the truth is, when I start my day by rushing my kids, especially my daughter, she doesn't have as good of a day. I have realized that. Is it really that important for her to be on time to school? Or is it more important for her to start her day on the right foot? And I have decided that for me, the urgent, sorry Megan, is, I got a sheet ready. The urgent is being on time. The important is helping my daughter start her day in a positive way. So that might mean we take an extra 20 minutes to goof around in the morning, or to change our outfit twice, or whatever it is. But there again, my important is the people. And I've come to realize that really, that was Jesus's important too. The reason Jesus had to leave these urgent, pressing people who already knew the good news was so that he could go to other people and tell them the good news. His importance was people as well. His importance was making sure that as many people as possible knew the love and grace of God. That was his importance. His importance was making sure that people knew Christ, that they knew his presence in the world, that they knew he had come from God to serve and to suffer and to save. And I've been thinking about that in our society in general. How many times are we in such a hurry that we don't even notice people? How many times are we in such a hurry that we don't even hold the door for the person who's 10 steps behind us? How many times are we in such a hurry that we cut somebody off in traffic? How many times are we in such a hurry that we honk our horn at somebody to get them moving at a red light? But beyond that, how often are we wrapped up in our own life, so much so that we aren't seeing the suffering of other people? How often are we wrapped up in our own day-to-day, the urgentness of our own day-to-day, that we miss the importance of others' suffering? How often are we wrapped up in the urgence of convenience that we ignore the importance of saving the world? We went on a car trip this last week on vacation, and I try not to use sandwich baggies because they're terrible for the environment. So I was wrapped up in the urgent, and I thought, oh, all of those containers in the car and getting them all back home, and we don't really have the space. And so I put all of our snacks in Ziploc bags. And when you have 2 toddlers in the car, you have about 27 pounds of snacks that you're putting in Ziploc bags. I was so wrapped up in the urgent of convenience that I ignored the importance of being environmentally friendly. Or, this week, I was so wrapped up in the urgent of living in my bubble on vacation that I didn't even watch the news. That I wasn't paying attention to the wildfires in Australia that are terrorizing a continent. That I wasn't paying attention to bombs. That I wasn't paying attention to children trapped in cages. I was so caught up in the urgent of my own life that I forgot the importance of people. And unfortunately, I think that happens so much to me. I'm so caught up in the urgent of making it through the day that I forget the importance of people. Christ understood how to say, yes, this is urgent, but this is important. Christ understood how to say, I need to walk away from the urgent in order to focus on the important, in order to build relationships with people, in order to make sure that every person knows the love and grace of God. And that starts in our daily living. In those moments when we are running late, are we still polite? Are we still showing love and grace? Because if we're not, yeah, we're dealing with the urgent, but we're ignoring the important. And that happens in our world as well. Are we so wrapped up in our own lives that we're dealing with the urgent of our everyday and ignoring the importance of every person on earth or the earth itself? Are we so wrapped up in the urgent of what is best for us that we're ignoring the importance of what is best for humanity? Or even more, what is best for our neighbor, even if it isn't best for me? I need to ask myself much more often, is this urgent or is this important? But beyond that, we need to ask as a church and as a society and as a nation and as humanity, are we dealing with the urgent instead of the important? Are we living in urgency instead of living the importance of God? Because Jesus understood what it came down to. It came down to people. And it came down to sharing life and love and grace with people. That is the important. And it is time for us to make sure we're living the important, not just the urgent. We are going to celebrate the sacrament of Holy Communion this morning. As we prepare to bless this holy meal, I remind you that this is Christ's holy table.